If there's one thing most of us in Illinois can agree on, it's that our roads and bridges need major repairs.
Civil engineers give the state's transportation infrastructure a nearly failing grade, and experts warn it could get worse.
Meanwhile, Congress is dragging its feet on a comprehensive transportation bill that would provide the money needed to fix the aging infrastructure.
I mean, there's cracks in 55 a foot wide. A tire could go in there and pinch the rubber right off the rim. I think it's pretty darn dangerous.
David Dodd has been in the trucking business for nearly 50 years. After driving all over the country, Dodd finds bridges in the Chicago area among the worst in the nation. Of the more than 3,400 bridges in this region, more than 300 are considered structurally deficient by the Illinois Department of Transportation. That doesn't mean they're unsafe, but they do need work, extensive maintenance, and modernization.
You drive along and see them just crumbling right underneath us or on top of us, and that's kind of scary.
Dodd was among dozens of Illinois residents who weighed in on the state's crumbling roads and bridges at a series of meetings hosted by IDOT, including this one in Joliet.
Amount of truck traffic on Interstate 80 that flies right by downtown Joliet has essentially cut our downtown off from visitors.
They want more and more on a box or in a box, and our road systems, not just locally or statewide, are not suited for that.
Acting Transportation Secretary Randy Blankenhorn, who has been conducting the listening tour around the state, will present a report to Governor Rauner next week about what he's heard.
Right now, 83% of our roads are in good condition. In 5 years, 60% of them will be in good condition. That's a huge drop-off.
And to keep the state's roads and bridges from ruin, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money.
We're talking in the billions of dollars over 5, 6, 10 years to get it back to a state of good repair.
To help ease congestion, IDOT has been working on the Jane Byrne Interchange, a nearly $500 million project, which is part of a long-term plan to get most of the state's roadways in acceptable condition by 2040. The Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, or CMAP, which oversees planning for the region, says roads, transit, and freight have not been adequately maintained.
So nationwide, we have a very serious infrastructure crisis going on.
Joe Sabo, a former railroad industry executive, is now senior fellow with CMAP. He points out that the American Society of Civil Engineers gives the country's infrastructure a grade of D+.
Our situation is really no different here in Illinois or in Chicagoland, where our infrastructure is aging, it's crumbling.
The planning agency estimates that cars and trucks are delayed more than 7,800 hours each weekday, idling at railroad crossings. Overall, infrastructure-related congestion costs $7 billion in lost fuel and productivity each year in the Chicago region.
Our rail system here in Chicago is antiquated. These are designs that were put into place in many cases over 100 years ago.
You can see clearly just how old the infrastructure is along 59th Street in the city's Englewood neighborhood, heavily traveled by trucks. Another vivid example, the recent collapse of track on the CTA's Yellow Line, shutting down service for weeks. Joe Sweeterman is a professor of transportation at DePaul University. He says the CTA and Metro combined need at least $3 billion each year to update the aging transit system.
When you look at the CTA, we still have wood platforms. We've got circuitry from the 1920s. The circuitry goes out when it gets cold. Metro at Union Station, they got switches that freeze because they can't have the proper insulation.
But money is tight because a comprehensive transportation bill is currently hung up in Congress. The Obama administration proposes spending $478 billion on transportation over the next 6 years. That's a 45% increase. Illinois would get nearly $2 billion in federal highway money. Meanwhile, Governor Rauner wants to cut almost $170 million from Chicago area mass transit. Those cuts include the CTA, Metra, and PACE. The governor also wants to slash $8.5 million set aside for disability paratransit services. With reduced funding from the state, experts say local government needs to be more aggressive about getting people to pay up for the roads and bridges they use.
Congestion pricing in our region. We have express lanes on the Kennedy. We have new construction happening on the tollways. But we've never really moved into something where we're going to charge people for the convenience of having an unobstructed roadway.
Chicago's gasoline tax, the highest in the nation, was supposed to cover roadway improvements. But since cars have become more fuel efficient, there's not enough money in the pot anymore to handle all the maintenance work.
Congestion here is bad, and unless we find ways to expand capacity, rail and road and air, you know, the choking is going to hurt us.
And Chicago area congestion is only getting worse. In 1982, the average commuter spent 18 hours a year stuck in traffic. Today, it's 70 hours per year.